You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're here to talk about day one of the fifth and final test of this Ashes series. It's a tinge of sadness for me, actually, just because it's the start of the end, isn't it? Things are drawing to a close. It's been a month and a half of pretty incredible cricket, storylines galore, nip and tuck, ebb and flow, and we're now marking the start of the final lap of this Ashes series. But delighted to say that to join me in watching the this ending unfold is Ross Legg. How are you, Ross?
Yeah, I'm all right, Max. All right, a little bit under the weather, but cricket to keep me company and work to keep me alive. So, which is good. Also, nip and tuck is a nice word, but I thought you, being a lover of puns, you would have said nick and tuck. But
Nick and tuck. You want to be careful with those sorts of bits of wordplay. It's very easy to end up doing spoonerisms and tripping over your words, and before you know it, you're saying things that are going to get you cancelled. So let's just keep it simple. As always, we'll be talking about all of the action today and the big talking points. But before we do, we'll go into sponsor mode. Normally we start with serious cricket. Why don't we start with Manscaped this time? Flip it around. 20% off with the code CricketPod at manscaped.com. Ross, you're a big fan of their work, no doubt.
You have to have a smooth sack when it comes to this summer. Smooth sack summer is what they're going for, and I think we've helped sell all kinds of Manscaped material and equipment. So if you use code CricketPod, 20% off. Get yourself sorted. So you go into August as smooth as a slip and slide.
Very nice, very nice. And don't forget free shipping, of course, along with that 20% off.
Of course.
Right. Well, let's get to it, shall we? The first day of the fifth test, obviously, the Ashes no longer on the line. They are heading back to Australia, come what may. But the series by no means decided, with Australia leading 2-1 as we go into the final test, and England is desperately hoping to level the series and avoid Australia winning outright. First things first, though, was the toss, and Pat Cummins finally got it right. I think he went tails again, didn't he?
We didn't whitewash them. Ben Stokes didn't whitewash.
No, we didn't white toss them or
white toss them.
Yeah, we'll work on that one. we'll keep brainstorming that. The toss whitewash not to be. And for all those people who are talking about how England had the best of the conditions throughout this Ashes series, it was time to flip it on its head and give Australia the chance to be bowling in the murky conditions. And for a moment, it looked like quite a good toss to lose as England rocketed their way to 60 odd for none, not without its risk and not without its help along the way from some slippery Australian hands in the slip cordon. But nonetheless, it was the typical attacking flair from England's openers, and it looked like a strong start. But as has been the case so often, back came Australia. Once Pat Cummins got the ball first change, he put in a pretty fearsome spell. That
it was a man reborn, wasn't he?
He was. It was a quality spell. Stopped England in their tracks, and 3 quick wickets had the Aussies on top. But nip and tuck, Ross, ebb and flow, as mentioned. The story of the series, and it was England who then took a stride forward with Moeen Ali and Harry Brook putting 100 together in just 102 balls to take England to 180 for 3. And looking like, again, a pretty decent score on the cards. And then back came Australia via the groin of Moeen Ali. And, an excellent bit of bowling from Mitchell Starc to remove Ben Stokes, and some slightly less excellent bowling, but questionable batting from Johnny Bairstow to let one through. Australia back on top. And then it was Wood and Wokes again, with a bit of a rearguard action.
The heroes of Headingley.
Indeed. Before Australia wrap things up, 283 all out. Let's pause there, Ross. Pause there in the summary of the day. What did you make of 283? given what you'd seen at the time, the conditions, losing the toss, where would you put 283 for England? Or par or an attempt?
So I think I actually was quite happy with that scoreline. I actually think so. I think getting stuck in against this bowling lineup, but let's be fair, that this Australia lineup looked revitalised compared to the last Test match. They genuinely looked like they were down and out in the last Test match at Old Trafford, and here Pat Cummins was revitalised. Hazelwood. Marsh even bowling relatively well, Hazelwood bowling pretty well, and then you had Stark, who I don't think had bowled a ball in between the Test matches, is what has been reported, and he was doing well. But England were going nearly over 5 and over, and so you sit there and you kind of old England fan is kind of sitting there going, well, we would have typically been maybe all out for 150 in kind of old thing, if with the rear guard action from Wokes and Wood.
Yeah, that stays.
Yeah, that stays. But you sort of hear like England get up to 283, and you're just like, well, actually, it's not that bad. I think anything around that 300 mark is always going to mean that you're in the Test match. And it's quite nice that, even though I think Australia are probably, well, it's not probably, they are definitely ahead in this Test match. England are by no means out of it. And you saw, I think, the benefit of, and I'll say it's the benefit of Bazball, right? You saw kind of us getting out of jail, I think, a little bit. And Harry Brook, he's absolutely mustard, isn't he? He gets dropped and Australia got chances to rue, but I don't know, it was weird that some of the catches, it just didn't seem like they picked the ball up very well. I mean, you saw Todd Murphy drop one at the end, which was the easiest caught and bowled chance for a spinner, like a spinner's going to get in professional cricket. And completely missed it. And he's wearing the bloody biggest goggles on the planet. So surely he's picking it up.
Hey, leave the
now.
bespectacled alone, Ross.
Hey now.
It's not our fault.
But I think from an England position, I don't think England are sitting there going, do you know what, really big missed opportunity and all this kind of stuff. I think there was, a couple of soft wickets in there, but it's always going to be soft wickets with the risk that they take. And going at 5 and over is just, it's still a win probably from the batting lineup. But it leaves the door ajar for Australia to win this Test series. Which is a massive, massive thing for people like Usman Khawaja, David Warner, who, this is probably going to be their last Test match series in England.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair summary of where it was. It was almost like England will probably be quietly content with what they ended up with, given given the Australian performance with the ball, given how it could have been, especially when you mentioned the drop, Alex Carey with a touch of the Johnnies to put down.
Why didn't he go two-handed? That's all I was saying.
Well, no, I mean that's exactly the problem with that. You got to be going for two-handed, and that the one-handed catch as a wicket keeper is very difficult, especially when the ball's flying. It sticks or it doesn't.
Yeah, like Carey, I think it's fair to say, has been like maybe not 10 out of 10. He's probably been like 8 out of 10 with the gloves across the series. A couple of missed difficult chances, but pretty bloody good. And that one was maybe not a dolly, but if you go two-handed, you're taking your chance of catching that from maybe 30% up to 70%, perhaps. Yeah.
That's it. And I think that's one of my main criticisms of Johnny Bairstow when it comes to keeping by on assumption. He goes at everything. Pretty much everything he goes at one-handed. If it's sort of outside of the normal arc and you haven't got your feet there and you're diving, pretty much everything he goes at one-handed. When it pull it off, it looks absolutely spectacular. But you got to be going at it with two hands all the time, and it's almost like you going at it like a goalkeeper. It's a bit, it holds you back a bit, but. I mean, you're right. Alex Carey's had a really good series. I completely agree with that. At least with the gloves. So everyone's allowed the odd mistake, aren't they? But it was proved to be a reasonably expensive one. I think Harry Brook was borrowing Zach Crawley's lucky pants today with that drop and getting away with a few through the slips to start with, and then once he got to about 30, he was basically just creaming everything. Everywhere and looking every bit the player he's been so far. So it was a really important innings for him, especially with England's other middle order, the engine room. That is the England middle order, putting on 12 runs between them. That's So that's the other thing, isn't it? England getting to 283 when you consider that Root got 5, Stokes got 3, and Bairstow got 4. I think they come out of that pretty well. But yeah, the flip side, obviously, Australia won the toss. They got to bowl first, and the target is, bowl England out for a score that you think you're going to be able to surpass when the batting conditions are better. And they did that. They probably got more than they wanted, but they're still, that's probably still you're happy with it, aren't you? You're going to take the 283. So this is like a weird point where England, behind them in the game, probably still not that upset about it. Australia probably let England a bit more than they wanted to, but still pretty happy with where they ended up.
Yeah, and I think that just has to come in from like the history of it all, right? We're still only a few years into, or a couple of years into the Bazball era, and we're still scarred from all of the, oh no, here comes Joe Root to save us. Unless Joe Root hits any runs, we're screwed. And that's what I think is the benefit of this. Like you've got people like Crawley, Duckett, Harry Brook could go out and give you big scores, and then the confidence that you saw in Wokes and Wood as well to kind of propel us up to that score, absolutely fantastic. I think other teams would definitely kind of crumble under a bit of that pressure. But Max, the Australians, I think they plugged away. There was that bit where they just almost accepted, yeah, do you know what, we're going to go for some boundaries. They were pretty awful in the field. There was midfields over the boundary. They dropped 5 catches in total. But they come out in probably exactly the position they wanted to, right, when they won the toss. England out for less than 300 on the first day. We've only lost 1 wicket before close of play as well, and it's David Warner, so who really cares because he doesn't any runs anyway. And yeah, they're in tomorrow morning, absolutely massive session, and what was the greenish pitch at the start of the day is now looking a little bit more of a beige pitch, and probably one that's actually better for batting on day 2 at the Oval.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, definitely getting to the end of the day with just the 1 wicket down, puts it very firmly in Australia's favour. And I think that probably feeds into a bit of the thinking about how aggressive England went at it, particularly after tea. They could have maybe tried to shut up shop a little bit and grind their way a bit more, but they probably thought, well, let's just try and get as many runs as we can and make use of as much of the conditions of it being, decent for bowling towards the end of the day as they could. But Australia batted really well. They didn't look really troubled from my point of view until Wokes managed to nibble out David Warner. I'll tell you who will care about David Warner being out though. That's Michael Atherton. Robbed of the opportunity to have someone match his record as a bunny. So he'll be spitting.
It is amazing. I was kind of thinking of that when I was watching it. And how many times do you think in the last 2 decades or 3 decades, where has Nasser Hussain mentioned that to Mike Atherton? Like it must be like at dinners, it must be at drinks, it must be like every time they're playing each other. It's just one of those like cloud.
I reckon he texts him every night.
Yeah, there is just something about it when you're sitting there just like, they're bringing it up again. It's just like, yeah, we get it. And they're like panning to Glenn McGrath. Like, isn't this funny? And it is just one of those things that is just like a joke that just never gets old if you are obviously Mike Atherton or Nasser Hussain.
Of a certain vintage, yeah. To be in fairness, they do exactly the same about Nasser Hussain and winning tosses, don't they? Like yeah, they do. After Cummins lost 4 in a row, it was all like, oh, was he going to match Nasser Hussain 10 in a row? And then obviously the jokes about even if he does win the toss, he makes the wrong decision. We've been hearing those jokes ever since they retired. You'd think they'd have some new material by now. Maybe they need to go on a little tour. Go to the Edinburgh Fringe, maybe work up some new material, seeing if they can get some new stuff going for us poor suckers who have to listen to it.
So Max, Tim's highlighted in the chat around Moeen Ali's injury. And he was attempting a bit of a quick single when he was.
Wasn't that quick?
And like he's the groin is gone by the looks of things. He didn't come back onto the pitch, but he did have a few lusty blows. He hit 23 off 10 balls after the injury, which is kind of reminiscent, right, of the Moeen Ali of old, of going out and just going having a bit of a dash. But he again was doing his job. He comes out again from in this number 3 position that England have kind of parachuted him into. 34. You're taking 34.
Yeah, 14 bonus runs, from the from the Mo and Elliott 3 experiment.
His average is rocketing up from the 13 it was before this for the last Test match.
I mean, we should probably give Pat Cummins a bit of credit after it was clear that Mo and Ali was just teeing off at that point. Bringing on Todd Murphy was a shrewd move. I thought you could. I mean, that was basically a free wicket, wasn't it? He couldn't get there. He tried to mow it down the ground, and that wasn't a deliberate pun.
It is interesting, Max, isn't it? That like Moeen Ali's record in T20 cricket is sublime against spinners, like really, really, really good. And if you see what he's done in this Test match, this Test series, he obviously struggled against Nathan Lyon. Do you remember when he came down the pitch and like missed it by maybe an Old Trafford's length of ground? It was ridiculous. And then here getting out to Todd, I think it was. He's a bit strange looking. I can't get it. Every time I look at him, I can't put my finger on it. There's someone or a mixture of people that Todd Murphy looks like, and I just can't. My brain can't figure it out. It's almost as like I'm getting too much information when I look at his face.
Yeah. Answers on a postcard in the chat if you think you can work out who Ross thinks Todd Murphy looks like. But I'm going to let Moeen off with. Yeah, I'm going to let Moeen Ali off with this wicket. I mean, that was clear. He was clearly hampered at that point. So I don't think. But
still did the Moeen Ali thing. It was just like brain over what his body can do and try to do the slog sweep.
Yeah, you got to applaud it. There was some chatter that Moeen Ali staying there and trying to tee off wasn't the right move, and they should have retired him hurt. Who
was saying that?
Brought him back at the end. Someone comms on Sky. I mean, you just said he got 23 off 10. Like, job done.
It's literally like he's in as well, right? It's one of those things. Yeah. So, no, come back in after you've gone down. You've got
after it's all seized up.
Yeah, and it's just like and like it's those kind of suggestions that you're just a bit like, I need to fill some air on this bloody commentary, and you're just like, no, just be like, obviously the right thing to do is Moeen Ali go mental here. Like, they're not going to save the groin injury, are they? If he's really done a mischief to it, I don't think hitting 10 more balls is going to make a material impact. But if you want physio services, please visit thecricketpod.com/physio services, and Max will come round to your house and give you a nice groin rub.
That's just the OnlyFans, Ross.
That's the OnlyFans. That is the OnlyFans.
Right, okay, but before this descends any further, I think we should let you cool down and have a very quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about the I guess how the day finished and where we think it might go from here. So we'll be back in a jiffy.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, for part 2 of our show covering day 1 of Test 5 of this Ashes series. We've done Mo, we've done England's innings, and we'll move on now. To how the day ended and where it might go from here. But before we do that, we'll go to our other sponsor, Serious Cricket. Get in there while you can. 10% off with the code TCP23 for all your cricket equipment. There you go. Easy for you to say. As you know, still a good month or so left in the season. If anything's broken, you can go and buy some more. And Serious Cricket's the place to do it.
I've got a crack in my cricket bat, Max.
Oh no! Didn't you just get it fixed?
Different cricket bat. So I'm so big time. I've got 2, and I'm averaging about 5 runs in the last 5 weeks. So which is really good.
Maybe now's the time, Ross, to go and get 10% off a new cricket bat at Serious.
They do have a cricket bat on there, Max, which is about £750. So
right, so you could make that 675.
Exactly. Max, we saw Usman Khawaja be Usman Khawaja at the Christian, and we saw David Warner threaten again to find a little bit of form. What did you think of how they approached it? Because it wasn't very friendly batting conditions. England obviously had the world's best pace bowler, according to Ben Stokes, in the lineup. Stuart Broad's attacking around the stumps. How did you think Australia did this evening?
I was very impressed with both of them this evening. I don't think England probably got as much out of the ball and the surfaces they might have liked, But in terms of, I think the order of the day for Australia, given, if we're going to go into traditional Test cricket and approaching it that way, their job was to get to the end of the day with as few wickets down as possible. I think if you think it was 25 overs, wasn't it? So if you get through that losing one wicket, I think that's a really good outcome. No wickets would have been obviously the best it could have been. There's some cutting edge analysis for you, but that would have been like reaching. I think you'd probably allow yourself one wicket in those conditions, but I think just losing the one's a really good return for them, and I thought they looked pretty untroubled for most of it. David Warner, with all the struggles he's had against Stuart Broad and all the rest of it, he looked pretty good, pretty belligerent, sort of aggressive in the way he was defending, but not chasing at anything or anything like that. I thought they did really well. I think Khawaja's making a play for usurping Dean Elgar in the Cockinator department. He's proving a bit immovable at times.
You'll get to the word obdurate, and then you have Dean Elgar crossed out and Usman Khawaja. He's now faced over 1,000 balls in this Ashes series, which is impressive, whichever way you look at it. But Easy Ollie in the chat highlighted their scoring rate, Max. So I know that it's kind of a bit of a switch of narrative, right? In terms of what we, as you said, the traditional way of kind of sitting there and making sure that you don't lose any wickets, versus the England way of no, we need to score it over 5 and over in Test matches.
Yeah.
I think you're right. They did look a little bit untroubled. There was a couple of bits. So Mark Wood found the edge. David Warner didn't carry to Johnny Bairstow.
Yeah, that was strange. That.
It was a bit of a dead patch.
89 miles an hour, it should be carried to the keeper.
Yeah, and then if you saw early on, there was a little tickle from David Warner down leg side, and Johnny Bairstow is full stretch, and it just kind of hits the fingertips. And then TMS, on the big letters, Bairstow drops Warner, and I'm just like, it's hard being a wicketkeeper, isn't it? It's like there is no escape ever.
Yeah.
And when you're playing at Ben Folkes' home ground, there's going to be even less, because the people in the crowd must be sitting there going, "Look, he's on the billboard over there. Why is he not in the team?"
Look at his teeth. Look at his hair. Should be in the team for that alone. I think. I mean, there's a couple of moments, but and I think there was also the review wasn't there, which was obviously not out, but Warner off the forearm, which was a good bit of bowling. But in those conditions, you expect a few chances, and I think compared to England's opening, there were relatively few. I take the point about Australia and not trying to score runs and not going anywhere. Obviously, it's completely opposite approach to what England did, but England were batting at the start of the day, and they had a whole day of these conditions ahead of them, really, at least, 2 sessions worth. Australia are looking at it thinking, well, let's get through to the end of the day and tomorrow will hopefully be easier to bat. So, I mean, they're looking at it, I guess, in a sort of like, what the prize would be.
There's 5 days to play, not England's view of there's 4 days to play.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is supposed to rain quite a lot on Monday, so it might be 4 days after all. But I just think, I mean, I don't have a problem with the way Australia approached it today. I mean, it's you're absolutely welcome to bat in whatever way you think is optimal for the situation, and I think tomorrow they'll probably come out and be a bit more attacking, and we'll see what's. Max, it
kind of fits into what happened in the last Test match, right? They don't have to go out and do this. Like literally, they can draw this Test match and they come away winning the Ashes. England have to win here. Australia did exactly the right thing of winning the toss, sticking England in. I mean, like, right, come on. And now Australia can control the pace of the game if they bat as well as they could well do. Right? They have brought in Todd Murphy for Cameron Green, who apparently was injured. It wasn't a drop. Apparently.
Right. And just saving some face there, no doubt.
Yes, yeah, but so that means they only back down to number 8 this time compared to the 9 they did last time. But yeah, they've got people in that team tomorrow on a let's be fair, Oval is always, regardless of what's happened in the county championship this year, is always a pretty nice place to bat, as Ollie Pope's record will tell you. And they've got Labuschagne, who's in recently from his 100, Kawaja, who we've struggled to get out all series. They've got Steve Smith, who is just a monster anyway, and a big point to prove here as well. And they've still got Travis Head, who is still in the top 3 ICC ranking Test match batters at the moment. So they're not hard up. Plus the Bison. So if I'm Australia, I'm sitting there going, do you know what? We've had an absolutely fantastic day. We have seen it through to the close. I agree with you, Matt. So we can go at whatever pace we like, and tomorrow is the day. If the sun is out, we're going to make hay and make massive inroads into this victory.
Yeah, I think they do stuff to be positive tomorrow, though, because I mean, you mentioned that they could approach it in a way that we only need to draw this game, but I mean that's such a dangerous way of playing. Like they got away with it. You can say they got away with it at Old Trafford, but ultimately the plan was to pick enough batters that they could make it through 3.5 days, and they did. So, whether they got away with it or the plan worked perfectly, maybe depends on which hemisphere of the globe you live in. But but when it comes to there being more likely 4 and a bit days of cricket, then that is a bit of a riskier tactic. I don't think they're going to have that in mind. I mean, they've picked Todd Murphy, presumably with a view to trying to take some wickets when it dries up a bit, and it did look like it might be starting to dry up. So, do you think Moeen Ali, assuming that his groin isn't going to miraculously recover overnight, is that going to be an issue tomorrow in England's innings?
Massive issue. I think it's a huge issue. If there is always those bits that sometimes, like, you just got to do it. Like, is there an injection that you can do? Is there something you do? Like, Mo, you've literally got these 4 days. Like, the Ashes ultimately is, in theory, on the line in your last ever kind of test match. Like, what can they do to get Moeen Ali back onto the field? Maybe they could put some of his special honey plaster stuff on his groin and see what happens. Saved his finger. Can it save his groin? But I think it'll be a massive loss. However, Joe Root has proven himself to be more than effective as England's almost kind of front line spinner on a couple of occasions. So it is not completely doom and gloom. But yeah, if they have Moeen and he can bowl, that is obviously an asset. Ben Stokes has kind of said that he's very unlikely very unlikely to bowl. So we might see old Harry Brook.
Harry Cherrington Brook.
Cherrington Brook, yes. So maybe we can see some of his Paul Collingwood dibbly dobblers kind of come into play tomorrow.
If we get to that point, I think we're in some trouble.
Yeah, and I think what's really disappointing me at the moment is, and it must be disappointing many England fans, is just the return that we're getting from Jimmy Anderson. Like, you can see that he's coming in, he's trying, but the ball just isn't doing anything for him. And like the pitches that England are playing on in this have just not assisted him in the way that kind of the juiced up wickets of the past obviously have done. And that's not to take anything away from Jimmy. You still have to bowl it, you still have to put it there, and you still have to get the batsman out. But you've just seen the wane in, whether it's luck, his aura, or whatever that's going to come out, and you just feel a little bit bad for him. I'm
surprised they picked him for the Oval. I mean, they showed the graphic of his averages and his records at the various grounds across England, and Oval is comfortably the worst, averaging 32 at the Oval. A reasonable number of wickets, but obviously not quite around the 23, 24 that he is everywhere else. And I can only feel like it must mean that Ollie Robinson is injured, because if Ollie Robinson was fit, I would be picking Ollie Robinson over Jimmy Anderson at the Oval. I would still consider picking Josh Tong just because of the record, and maybe to take Anderson out of the firing line. But do you think, is it a sign? And I suppose this can go a little bit towards some of the questions that popped up in the chat. Is it a sign that they're maybe giving Anderson a bit of a swan song, like one last chance, or do you think it's just a case of we're going to stick with our guy? Donna was asking about whether Anderson's going to retire after this series.
So my view on this is that yes, England do have this kind of sentimental side of things. Definitely in this side, there's a lot of like part of the boys' club aspect to it, and that's one that makes kind of the team really, really good. But then also from the outsider's perspective, there is a question mark around: are you doing the things that we think are going to ultimately win you the game of cricket? Jimmy Anderson has had a torrid time. Like he's not going for loads and loads of runs, but he's not picking up wickets, and ultimately that is the
He's not even
currency,
looking
unfortunately.
threatening, is he? That's
And
the worrying
and
thing.
and that, I think that's also the piece here. Like when Jimmy Anderson's played in Australia, they've kind of had that plan just to be like, yep, we're just going to see kind of Jimmy out, right? We're gonna. It's kind of always been that bit. Some of the other teams that come against him really struggle to do that because they want to be a bit more positive, especially in England. I do think Robinson would have played if he was fit. I think picking Josh Tongue is a nice thought process, and I think he's definitely got the right attributes to play. But I think in a shootout, you're picking the guy with 700 Test wickets, right? And especially when Ben Stokes comes out in the press and kind of says that he's the best pace bowler of all time. I think it was very difficult then for them to just be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're dropping Anderson for this Test match.
Yeah. I know, you look at, obviously people start throwing the age numbers around and that kind of thing, but we should remember that last year he had his best year ever, basically, like 36 wickets at 19 or something obscene.
Yeah,
Yes, caveat that with the fact that some of those pitches against South Africa were a little on the bowler-friendly side, but he also bowled well overseas, and he's had a good record away that he hasn't necessarily had. So I think he deserves a chance to show that it's just a few games, because every bowler goes through a period like that, right?
and it's really interesting, right? Because I think when it comes to Test match cricket, especially with how thick and fast these Test matches have come as well, um, like having three bad games or kind of like games that you've been ineffectual in, like that's not really a call. Like if Shane Warne, the greatest spinner of all time, had three Test matches where he didn't look very threatening, you're kind of not sitting there going, should he be in this team or not? Like it is one of those
Yeah.
things, and I think sometimes people, like, and I think we're probably guilty of the podcast from time to time, but like we're just so used to Jimmy Anderson being there and doing what Jimmy Anderson does is mind boggling to then sit there and be just like, oh, Jimmy Anderson's actually 40, he's not doing as much as he did before, and we were almost treated during kind of the pandemic and the last year of Jimmy Anderson, still ripping through teams. And so the second it stops happening, you're a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, my trusty old car is no longer that trusty. So it's a very
Yeah.
difficult one for, I think, England fans to square away in their heads, and it's even more difficult for, I guess, the England kind of setup to walk away from somebody like that because,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
three
think
Test
he's
matches,
earned,
who cares?
to a degree, he's earned the right to be in control of his own destiny, hasn't he? Obviously, if things start going horribly, horribly wrong, England might stop picking him. But I think if things go that badly, he's probably just going to be like, I'm going to call it a day. And I think
Yeah,
he's probably, he's not got so much hubris that he thinks he's going to carry on playing till he's 50. I can imagine someone like Cristiano Ronaldo saying, I want to be playing at the top level of football until I have to have two knee replacements. Although, he's in Saudi Arabia. So we'll caveat that point. But I think I think Jimmy knows when his time's up. And I think to a degree, it's up to him, up to him to make that call. And I think England will probably go along with that. So tomorrow, I mean, the conditions don't look necessarily that much different. Bit of cloud around, perhaps a very brief shower, but the pitch maybe flattening out a little bit. Where do you see tomorrow and the rest of this game going?
so
Time
if
to
it's if
nail
the
your colours to the mast.
if the Test series is anything to go by, England will roar back in the morning, right? And it's not to say that Australia have gone completely past them when they're like 50 for 1, but if they are going to make any kind of impact and set themselves up to win this game, they have to have an absolute blinding first session tomorrow. There's not that bit of waiting till where Australia are kind of 150 for 1 and then we take a couple of quick wickets, but then Australia can still rattle themselves to 350. I think if Australia kind of get that lead, like that, England is it's such a difficult place to be. and that said, if we're losing kind of Moeen Ali as well, then we potentially are a batsman down, and that kind of number 3 plan kind of goes out the window as well. So there's definitely, like, as with all Test match cricket, there's so many different subplots to this. So yeah, tomorrow we're going to really need to see Jimmy Anderson come out and kind of, do you know what, sod all this. I'm going to put the ball on the spring. I'm going to get the old Vaseline out, kind of whatever magic that Hoodoo has been doing, borrow the sandpaper, all that kind of shit, and trying to get that ball swinging and really make an impact. If they don't, then Australia then rack up a pretty decent lead. They take time out of the game, and that's where England really don't want to be.
I think the plan's got to be sneak into the umpires' change room overnight, find the ball, and just dip it in a pint of water. Stuart Broad spent most of the evening trying to get Joel Wilson to change the ball, and Joel Wilson just kept forcing it through those rings. So maybe overnight they can sponge it down and get it changed and get one that starts doing something. That's got to be England's plan overnight. A few questions from the chat, and then we'll wrap things up. We'll start with a nice, easy one for you, Ross. We'll do a big roundup where we cover all these sorts of things, but Tim wants to know who your player of the series has been so far.
So my view on when it comes to how you judge a player in the series is definitely on the amount of runs you hit, because I'm an opening batsman and that's what it is. So after all of the difficulty that he faced, at the moment, I can't look past Zach Crawley. Just pure weight of runs. Like, fair play to the lad. He's literally sitting there. He's gone against every single person's expectation of him, other than Rob Key, Brendan McCullum, and probably himself. And you're sitting there going, do you know what? Fair play. You're playing against Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Josh Hazlewood. Like, they are they're definitely in the last kind of 5 years or so, they've been 3 of the top 5, or definitely in the top 10 bowlers in the world. Pat Cummins is the best bowler in the world, and his average against him is something ridiculous now. So he's having an unbelievable series, and fair play to him.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really tough one. I think Zach Crawley is a fair shout for the best player compared to what the expected return was.
Yeah. Most improved player is definitely
definitely. As for the overall, I think it's tough. I feel like you can't. It'd be hard not to pick an Australian given how it's gone. I think Pat Cummins has been really good with the ball, even though his average isn't great. But I guess that's because England have been so aggressive. But I guess there's been more of an all-round team performance from Australia, so you can get around it with that, I suppose.
Yeah, and Khawaja, let's be fair, he's helped them win Test matches as well, right? So
big time.
Zach Crawley's contribution was great, and his way in which he started the innings off for England have been fantastic with Duckett. But Khawaja has literally batted forever in some of this bit. So I think if I was a neutral and it was that piece of Crawley, Khawaja, I'd have to put my England hat away and kind of say, actually, on the contribution to your team winning or losing the Ashes, Usman Khawaja is probably ahead of Crawley.
Cool. And I can't find it now, but I did see it. Oh, there it is. Will Ben Stokes bowl spin this match?
I bloody hope not. I really hope not.
What?
No,
I want to see it.
When Ollie Robinson bowled off spin, that was probably the lowest point of being an England fan.
Yeah, it was bad, wasn't it? What I want to see is Jimmy bowling his left arm spin. That's what I'm in the game for. And London E148 asked if we're going to be at the ground tomorrow or Saturday. I'm going to be there on Saturday. Are you going?
No, I didn't get a ticket, so I'm playing cricket on Saturday. So trying to get out of my funk with the bat at the moment. But it's going to be raining, uncovered wicket, and we've got an unbelievably shite umpire. So it's a recipe for success.
Well, I'll be thinking of you as I quaff pint after pint in the pavilion, watching England propel themselves into a fantastic second innings lead. But until then, we'll be some of us will be back tomorrow to talk about day 2 and see how things go. Just a reminder you can find us at the Cricket Pod on all of the social medias, as listed below me on this lovely overlay background thing, and also Patreon if you want to support us correctly and keep us doing what we're doing. Patreon.com/the Cricket Pod. Remember to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And thanks for listening. And we will see you after play tomorrow. So cheerio.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.